I will admit it. I gave the cinema a lot of my money. I went to the movie theaters a ton in 2024. So just like in 2023, I'm going to go through every single movie that came out theatrically that I've seen this year for the year of 2024. Alright, so the very first film that I saw in cinemas that released in 2024 was the movie Argyle. Now, Argyle was one of those films that did not do financially well. It is a terrible movie, I will say it. The script, the concept are so bizarre, and the story takes so many dumb turns, but it has so much fun doing it. Like, I would say this film is bad, but it is laughably bad. Not in a sense that you're laughing because it's so terrible, but at the same time you are. Like, you aren't saying, oh, I'd never watch this again. For me, I was like, I would totally watch this again. Like, I would totally own this if this came out on physical media. Because, yeah, this movie is so insane. From the ice skating in oil, to the music box possession, to the Henry Cavill, not Henry Cavill fight scenes, and the spy plot. This movie is insane. And I absolutely loved pretty much all of it. Like, there are certain parts in the film where I didn't enjoy it. But I think if I watched it again, if I go back to my experience, it was so much fun. It was so much fun to start the year off with just such a over-the-top movie. This movie truly is one of a kind. There are quite a few films this year that completely go for it and just go for the insane. But this is the one that goes so over the top, it is hilarious. And I really did enjoy Argyle. No, I don't think it's a great movie, but I had a lot of fun watching it. And so I'm honestly going to give it, I think, an 8 out of 10. Like I said, it's pretty bad, but I had so much fun watching it. Alright, just cut to the chase. On February 14th, Madam Web released in theaters. The next installment in the Sony Spider-Man non-Spider-Man universe. The SSU, as some people have called it. This film is absolutely garbage. This is one of the worst movies ever made, and I am extremely glad I did not pay money to go and see this. This film is so bad. I'm going to be honest with you, I don't know how the film hit 100 million. I don't know how this film even got into the millions. This film is so bad. The plot, once again, is really dumb. So basically, there's this guy, or there's this woman researching spiders in the jungle, and then this guy's protecting her, and then he kills her, and then he, is a villain for years. There's this one character who falls in a lake, and then they realize, oh, I can see the future, because they have this moment or whatever. And then Ezekiel Sims, the villain, is basically like, I need to go kill these 3 girls because I see they are going to kill me. Automatically that gets red flags because that is the creepiest plot ever. But holy crap, this film messes up. Anyways, I have to honestly give Madam Web a 2.5 out of 10. Alright, so on February 23rd of 2024, a smaller film released from the studio Lionsgate. Now, Lionsgate has not been having the best year, and I will say this, that this is not a blockbuster movie. But I do think it was a different kind of movie, and it meant more to me, because I know people who have had to deal with this kind of thing. The film I'm talking about is Ordinary Angels, and this film, it really meant a lot to me and the person I went with, because we know people who have been in that kind of situation with a liver transplant. This is a very different film. This is definitely not one that is watched lightly. This has some very frightening scenes in it. Not on a horror trying to scare you level, but on a severity of the situation level. This is a really sad story. This is a really Not even sad story, that's the wrong word. This is a really heavy story. But, you know, it is a good movie. I honestly did think it was a really good effort. I did. I think people need to see a film like this. I think nowadays there are way too many movies that are just blockbuster popcorn. There are way too many movies that are just blockbusters. And that's what I like about studios like Lionsgate and Pureflix or Angel Studios. Maybe they don't always hit the mark. Maybe some of their films don't mean anything to me, but at least they're trying. At least they're trying to tell stories that need to be told. But I'm going to give this film a 6 out of 10. Alright, so on March 1st, I saw the movie of the year. Well, it wouldn't be my number one movie, but I bet it was for quite a few people. Dune Part Two. Now, my relationship with the Dune universe is pretty interesting. I have a community of friends who really like the Dune novels and films. They really do. However, I didn't like the first Dune movie. I found it disturbing. I found it boring. I found it confusing. I found it really weird. But I went to Dune Part 2 with the friends that I'm talking about who have a better... How do I put this? They have a better understanding of the content to where I didn't feel as lost, but also this film was what I wanted. This is the action movie. And you know, it's interesting because I see quite a few other people saying the same thing. In fact, I'm on a movie fan edit site, and on the forums for movies that people have recently watched, someone said that they didn't really like Dune Part 1, but that they really liked Dune Part 2. And I think it's just because it was the action part of the story. The fact is that this was one huge movie. This was one huge story about Paul Atreides and all the politics, the Dune spice, and everything like that. This is one huge story that culminates in the third act and the final battle. And the first film was basically Act 1. That's what the first film really was. It had a 3-act structure. It tried to, at least. But the first film was the one where you're meant to get to know things. It was the one where you're talking about the politics, and you've got how the Great Mothers rule, and how the spice works and everything. So if I had to give Dune Part 1 a review, I'd probably give it a very low score. But I'm going to give Dune Part 2, I think, a 6 out of 10. Even if not just for the story itself, for the experience that I had. Alright, on March 15th, we had another movie release, and that movie was Arthur the King, another one from Lionsgate. And it starred Mark Wahlberg, and it's basically about him racing across the world and this little dog that he finds. And I'm going to say this. This is once again another one of those films that I think we need to see more of. I'm tired of the smaller stories being sent to streaming, because not all the smaller stories need to be on streaming. This is a fun, innocent film about a man and his love of a dog and their journey together. And I really enjoyed it. And it had that cinematic aspect to it. You know, it had like the big trotting adventure. You had him fighting to save the dog's life near the end. Like, it was a really sweet film. I honestly really enjoyed it. And I think that's something I have to say about the beginning of this year, that I just noticed quite a few interesting films. Even if they weren't the best things I ever saw, they were interesting, and they were fun, and they were enjoyable. And this was another one of those. Honestly, when I think about it, I can't say much for Arthur the King. It's kind of forgettable, but in a good way. I'd love to see this again. So I'm going to give Arthur the King, honestly, I think a 6 out of 10. Alright. May was originally meant to start with Deadpool, but the actor's strike kinda moved everything. And so, what did the summer start with instead? a hilarious Ryan Gosling movie entitled The Fall Guy. And this is one of those films that I'm honestly mad didn't make a lot more money. This film is absolutely hilarious. I love this movie. It's about a stunt guy doing stunts and a movie set. There's just so much going on, but it is so funny. Even the parts where it is so cheesy, it is done in a way where it is actually really funny to watch. This film has so much fun. This film is once again like Argyle. Maybe it doesn't all make sense. Maybe it isn't the best thing ever made. But did it make me laugh? Yes, it did. It was a really funny film. I really enjoyed myself seeing The Fall Guy. And once again, I'm honestly sad this film didn't make a lot more money, because I think it should have. This is actually a really funny film. And I'm glad that this film has gotten some great reviews. It makes me happy for this kind of movie. So I'm going to give The Fall Guy an 8 out of 10. Alright, so another one of the smaller films I saw this year was Angel Studios' Sight. Now this film actually kind of meant something to me as someone with a vision impairment. It was really nice getting to see this kind of story being told about this doctor who always wished he could have done the best to do better and to complete his specific passions for healing patients of their blindness. And it's based on a true story, and I do like those kinds of films from Angel Studios. And in general, you know, there are some really good true stories to be told. And this was one of them. Now, I do have to say that the one criticism I give this film is that it got a theatrical release. While I am happy for it, I will say it did feel like a documentary type of film. But at the same time, it clearly had an audience. This film wasn't the biggest moneymaker in the year, but it definitely did make some money. And I think it's great that it did, because it meant quite a bit to people. And like I said, to me, I found it interesting. As someone with a vision impairment, I don't get into my health and that kind of stuff often, but I do have a vision impairment, and so a film about a guy who tried to help someone of their vision impairment is really heartwarming. You know, I think I'd honestly give this film a 6 out of 10, and maybe at worst, a 5.5 out of 10. I'm going to keep this brief because I've recorded this multiple different times and I can't find the right words. But if I had to summarize Inside Out 2, I would say it is important. Anxiety is a real issue in humans. It is a real issue in the world. And I really appreciate that Inside Out 2 is not just a fun Disney Pixar sequel, but that it feels like classic Pixar where they are trying to say something. They are trying to connect with the audience. They are talking about an actual feeling people go through. Do you know how many events I get anxious about before I go to them? That something's gonna cancel it? It's something I deal with. And it's really nice to see that actually represented. It's really nice to see a film where it isn't just superheroes blowing things up, but it is about a human child, or teenager in this case, dealing with the emotion of anxiety and nostalgia and envy and all the emotions that come in the film. But I will say this, Inside Out 2 is a really good film. I don't think it's the best Pixar film ever made, but I will tell you this, I think it is a sequel that deserved to be made. Because I think what they did was they said, here's the grounds of the original film. We've shown emotions, and we've shown that we can tell a story using emotions. And we can replicate how they act. Not replicate, but we can try and demonstrate what they are like. And Inside Out 2, I felt like they were willing to go the extra step and show those emotions, show their growth, bring in the new emotions of anxiety, and that kind of thing. And you know, I think you always have anxiety in life, but I think as you get older, you get more anxiety. I'm not a psychologist or anything, but Look, where am I going with this? I really liked Inside Out 2. I really did. There were scenes in it that I thought were really powerful, if that's the word. The scene where anxiety is just spinning and it's just almost a motion blur of orange colors. That scene is how it feels sometimes. You just have those days where you can't shake it. It's just there. And you need help. And I really like the way they kind of represent that. They don't make the film with a message of go get therapy per se. They make the film with a message of it is okay to have those issues. And people are willing to help you. And it is normal to feel that way. The scene where all the emotions help pull anxiety back is, I think, a good representation of what it can take sometimes. Because you can't always do it on your own. Anxiety is really hard to deal with. And look, I don't want to get too philosophical or anything, but I did think this was a special film. And I actually am really happy this film exists. More so than I think for Moana 2 or Frozen 2. They're great movies. I go and enjoy. They're fun movies. But it doesn't matter as much. Where this film does. And honestly, I would watch Inside Out 2 again. I would. Even as someone who's, not really into Pixar and Disney as much, I'd say Pixar more so, I would watch Inside Out 2 again because, I don't know, it just has a story that feels relevant. It feels like a story that can really be with you at any age. Kind of like the first film, but I think more so. And I appreciate that Pixar were willing to grow with the audience a little bit and tell the story. I really liked Inside Out 2. And so I'm going to give it, I think, a 7.5 out of 10. Beautiful visuals, a really good story, and it's just a really relatable film. And I did really enjoy myself seeing it, and I'm happy I did. Alright, another film that I did end up seeing this summer was in the month of July with Angel Studios' Sound of Hope, the story of Possum Trot. Now, this film basically tells the story of kids who are in the foster system, or rather kids that are needing to be rehomed. They've come from abusive families and they have their own sort of PTSD or trauma that they're feeling. There's all these things they're coming from with the, homes they used to live in. And this film tries to tell the story about how these families, the specific one of the two main characters, took on this little girl who thought she was a cat, who was bullied in school, who was just mistreated, and she's kind of the core point of the film for a main character to follow, but there's also a point made in the movie that she's not the only one. There's tons of families that are shown to be adopting kids. It is a point made that the foster parents want to adopt as many as possible, ones that no one else will take. It's very much a story with a message of trying to encourage people to take into the foster system, and if they're willing and if they're ready, take on a foster child, because there are hundreds of them that just have no family, that are leaving abuse and just need someone to truly love them. I did think it maybe stayed a little bit too much on the character I mentioned, the one that's meowing like a cat, and I think it stuck on her a bit too much, and I get it was trying to be based on a true story and on real situations, but I feel like in a film like this, it would be better to have it be about more families to make the issue more relevant and not so specific, but those are just my thoughts. But I do think it is a good film for people to watch. So I'm going to give Possum Trot a 5.5 out of 10. It wasn't my favorite film to watch, but I do think it has an important message. Alright, Now that we've gotten through some of the more depressing but more thought-provoking films, it's time to just have some big summer blockbuster fun with 2024's Twisters. Twisters is a great movie. I don't think it is a great movie in terms of, is it the best film ever written? No, it is not. It is a great film, though, in the aspect of, you can just go and enjoy this, and you don't even have to care about the first film. Honestly, Twisters has some very light references to the original, very light. What this film does is it says, this is the original world, there's this machine for the tornadoes, but we're gonna take those two aspects, this one machine and tornadoes, we're just gonna give you a fun summer adventure of people going after these tornadoes. In other words, tornado chasers. And I find this film much more enjoyable than the original Twister. I found the original Twister to be overly long, overly boring, a little bit too much foul language. But I found the second one to be way more exciting and way more enjoyable. I really like Twisters. In fact, I went and saw this in theaters with a friend, and yeah, we both loved it. We thought it was great. I'm very happy to own this one in my collection. I think Twisters is ultimately a better film in terms of summer blockbuster fun. I think the first film is fine for those who want a more slow-paced kind of tornado hunting film with a few action scenes, but if you just want the popcorn-style movie, then Twisters is the one to go to, and I'm honestly going to give this film, I think, a 7.5 out of 10. Alright, so there was one offering from Marvel Studios this year. With Bob Iger coming back, he had them delay a lot of their projects so they could fix them to be up to the studio's standards, but there was one movie that did not end up getting delayed, at least not that far. That was Deadpool and Wolverine, which was originally slated for the month of May, but came out in July, and what a way to end my summer at the movies. This film is so much fun. Deadpool and Wolverine is, in fact, the most foul movie I think I've ever watched, and I don't appreciate all the bad language. But what I do appreciate are the fun sequences, the usage of certain songs with scenes. This film just has so much fun. Ryan Reynolds is a great comedy actor, and him and Hugh Jackman do a great job playing off of each other. They're so much fun to watch. There are sequences in this film that are absolutely hilarious. There are cameos in this film, and they're the unexpected cameos. I'll be honest, some of them disappointed me, I could care less, but there weren't too many cameos, and when there were a lot of cameos, they were pretty one-note. But it was a really fun film overall. I really did like Deadpool and Wolverine. I thought it was a really, really fun movie. I thought it had a lot of fun playing in the Marvel Universe, making fun of the facts of Marvel and Disney and Fox and everything. I thought it was a really funny film. This is definitely high on my favorite MCU films list. Maybe not my favorite, but the most enjoyable MCU films. Because there's some, like Black Panther Wakanda Forever, or even Avengers Endgame, where a lot of it is story or drama over action and comedy. This film is pure action and comedy. It's weak in the story department, but in the entertainment department, this film scores high. And I'm honestly gonna have to give Deadpool and Wolverine a 7 out of 10.